Okay, we are getting towards the end of this PowerPoint, I promise. In this section, we're going to focus mainly on key concept 2.3, or the culture within Rome. So we're going to, it's kind of interesting. There are really two pieces of culture. I mean, there's like so much more complicated than this, but there's two parts of culture in Rome. You've got high culture, that practiced by the patricians, and you've got low culture, stuff for everybody else. So if you were like a rich person in Rome, you would probably have a Greek tutor. Obviously, the Romans really loved Greek culture. You can see this through their philosophy, which carries on the Hellenistic philosophers and is very rooted in rational thinking. You can see it in Virgil, who brings the Aeneas to Rome with the idea of the Battle of Troy being an origin of Rome. You can see this in math, where they carry on geometry, literature, art, architecture. I mean, it's all very Greek. Their temples are very Greek. They've got the columns as the Greeks use. The thing that they add into that is the domes, like the dome and the Pantheon. And in urban areas, that's also like the high culture. You've got the Roman baths, you've got the Colosseum, the Circus Maximus, and plays. And some of these things go into low culture as well, which we talked about the bread and circuses pacifying the urban masses with their large, long festivals. Rural areas definitely were more localized, and they did not. They really maintained a lot more of their like non-Roman flair. But in the cities, urban culture was very universal throughout Rome. It looked similar in Rome as it did in Britain, as it did in Anatolia or Turkey, as it did in Egypt. This is the baths of Diocletian, and I like to use this one because the Romans in their baths would have different temperature rooms, and you can't really see this here. But the baths also had like a hot room or a caldarium, a tempedarium or a middle temperature room, and then a frigidarium, a cold water room. They also had workout studios. They had hair salons. It was really a social place. They had masseuses and all kinds of stuff. This is a Circus Maximus that could fit 250,000 spectators. It was used for chariot races and other types of races. And in the middle, you've got all of these, well, oh my gosh, the name is escaping me, but these are all from different places that Rome conquered. This is a Circus Maximus today, and for a time in Rome, this was like a really seedy area, but today you can go there and check it out. It's near the Forum. Colosseum, again in the center of Rome. Um, it had these awnings, and we'll be examining these a little bit more in class, but that could shade the spectators. And they also could flood the Colosseum here. It had a false floor, and exotic animals and people would pop out of the middle here. Hundreds of animals and people could be sacrificed in the Colosseum in a day. Social structure in Rome is pretty similar to what we've learned about in other areas as far as what you need to know for AP. And this actually goes into Key Concept 2.2. It was very patriarchal. The father played a dominant role. Patricians were the higher class. They controlled the land. They were oftentimes merchants and government officials, but they were the rich. Plebeians were the poor. You can see the different outfits that the people would wear. It wasn't just togas, people. There were lots of variations on the toga over here in this area here. Okay. And slaves, up to 1/3 of the population. This is from the movie Spartacus. Great movie. Spartacus was a slave who led a slave revolt, and millions of slaves in Rome um, that led to some problems. Okay. Now getting into cultural aspects of religion, I'm just going to give you a nice overview here, and then we're going to go into Christianity and Judaism more in the next part of the PowerPoint. So cults. Part of Roman religion was very private. These cults, like secret cults kind of. One of them is Mithraism. And that actually came from Zoroastrianism. It was a big part of the military. And another example of a more local cult is the cult of Isis, which came from Egypt. A lot of high religion was inspired by the Greeks. So you have the god Jupiter, who was Zeus, the Greek god Zeus. Venus was Aphrodite, etc., etc. However, in Rome, the emperor must be worshipped as a god, and this brought the Romans into conflict with some minority religions and Christianity, such as Christianity. So minority religions such as Judaism were monotheistic, and while many minority religions who were polytheistics were tolerated, these monotheistic religions were a threat because or seen as a threat because they did not worship the emperor as God, and they didn't want to pay taxes to the emperor as God. When Jesus says, "Give to the emperor what's the emperor's, and give to God what is God's," like that's a reference to that. That's this idea that we're not going to worship this God. And then Christianity. Christianity is an interesting as it goes on in the Roman Empire. Originally, there's a lot of persecution, and then eventually acceptance. All right, so in the next part of the PowerPoint, I promise we're getting towards the end. We'll talk about Christianity and Judaism in the Roman Empire and then the fall of Rome.